I'm continuing my search for Game of the Year 2020, and this was recommended by the Hebden Bridge Chess Club in West Yorkshire, a very beautiful part of the world. So I'm grateful to them, and I have to say it was a game that also caught my eye too. It was played in the German Bundesliga, that's the team competition in Germany, in September, and it was a proper classical over-the-board game. So we have Erwin Lamy from the Netherlands playing white. He's, well, a very experienced player, has had some really good results in his career. But over the past few years, he's concentrated on seconding. So he was a second for Veselin Topalov. And recently, well, over the past few years actually, for Anish Giri. And doing a good job with Anish at the moment. And his opponent with the black pieces, Fabiano Caruana, the number 2 player in the world. So, not an easy one. So, it's a regular start so far. And the game could go in lots of different directions from here. But Fabiano plays an extraordinary move, which shows that he wants something different, something new. He's trying to win with black, basically. H6, well, this looks like a beginner's move. But in fact, if you put this through the strongest chess engines, it thinks it's playable. I would say do not try this at home. It's a wasted move as far as I'm concerned. But of course, in practical play, then it's quite possible. And now, white can do many things. I quite like g3 and bishop g2 and just pretend it's a Catalan, where this one isn't perhaps very useful. It's interesting, Carlson has played this a few times as well in his online speed games. Anyway, bishop f4 played. Why not? And here, well, if black wants to play solidly, then this is a reasonable move, exchanging bishops. I think, white is always going to be a bit better in that position, but I think it's a reasonable way for black to play. But Fabiano clearly wants an unbalanced fight. That's why he's played h6. Bishop b4. Lamy took, and knight takes d5. I think if pawn takes d5, then we would just be back in a Ragozin where h6 I don't think is a very useful move. So knight takes d5, hits the knight, hits the bishop and hits the knight. So the bishop drops back and covers. Castles. I should say that I'm basing some of my observations on this game on Erwin Lamy's notes in New in Chess. There we go. I've pointed out this magazine before. In my opinion, simply the best magazine out there. Superb magazine. So here we go. Lamy said that, of course, he was looking to play this. But he said that Fabiano was playing very quickly and, he wasn't too comfortable about this. He just felt that black should be all right in this position. And, there is some pressure here. Given that the pawn was already on h6, of course, he was already looking at, the now standard move g4 with the idea of breaking things open, considering that pawn is on h6. But he felt that black should have enough play after c5. It's quite ironic considering what happens over the next few moves. Anyway, Lamy played g3. Very sensible. Knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop a5. So, now one would anticipate, say, bishop g2 and castles. And, it looks a little bit better for white to me. So nice bishop on g2 and black is lagging behind in development. But at this point, Lamy thought, right, I'm going for it. He now played g4. It's really funny to go g3 and then g4 over just a few moves. But he felt that his centre was now stable enough in order to play g4. So, standard idea nowadays. You want to play rook g1 and open up the g file. And here well, Fabiano played c5. Lamy mentions also e5 in this position. It's a really interesting sack just to open up the position, and then c5. I have to remember that White's king is a long way from safety here. It might just have to live in the middle of the board, and that, of course, is chancy. One could also play knight c6 and c5, and e5 rather. Anyway, Caruana continued in the traditional way with c5, rook g1, and now, well, in fact, Caruana mentioned after the game that he felt he should have taken and played knight c6, and then just sacked this pawn again, and bishop e6. And it's true that this does open this diagonal once you take. So rook g1 just played. Instead, Caruana played knight c6. Well, you know, what's the difference? This seems like very natural development. Well, here Lamy played, I think, an excellent move. He took on c5, which looks counterintuitive to give away your center like this, and also, you know, basically wreck your pawns. Under normal circumstances, one would just look at that and think ugly. But actually, strangely, it gives White security because, well, Black can't open this diagonal. So actually, this bishop is to some extent out on a limb. And White can follow up with queen c2 and castle queenside. And Lamy said that after playing that, he somehow felt a lot more secure with his position. So e5. Okay, advancing in the center looks reasonable. Now if g5 straight away, Lamy said he looked at this for a long time, but he couldn't really see how to pursue the attack in this position. I mean, it's also very sharp, but it looks like Black is defending. So e5 just been played. Queen c2. Why not? Nice and steady. Here one could simply sack a pawn, and I have to say it looks tempting. Queen takes and then rook e8. Well, who knows what's going on then. Instead, rook e8 from Caruana. Maybe he was just being a bit too careful here. White could castle here, but g5 also pretty good. That's the game continuation. And of course, if pawn takes, knight takes, and already there is a threat to play queen down to h7. So Caruana decided to try and close the g file. Well, kind of. There is now a threat to play rook takes g6. So e4, knight g5, and bishop f5. So Caruana, in playing bishop f5, has secured the g6 pawn to some extent, and, well, certainly blocked out this diagonal for the time being. Castle's queenside. I mean, it's just a mad position. Lamy was hoping that Caruana would play this move and grab the queen. And Black is the exchange up, a rook for a bishop up, but White has, let me count them, 3 pawns and a bishop for a rook. Well, this is simply better for White. 2 bishops as well. This bishop could be extremely strong in this position. So no, I mean that's just a mistake. It would clarify the situation for White. Queen f6 looks reasonable. Bishop h3, right, so here we go. This is basically continuing the strategy of clearing away the defensive pieces to try to get through to the king. It's pretty brutal stuff. So after this, for example, then, well, the bishop can come here, blockading that pawn, and the knight will come back to g5. This will be threatened. White is doing pretty well. So after bishop h3, e3 played. So serious calculation needed at this point. It is starting to really flare up. So bishop takes queen threatened. Therefore, bishop takes bishop. Pawn takes bishop, check. Let's recapture. And I've got to show you this variation. I should say here that Fabiano played rook e5. What happens on queen takes bishop? This is wonderful. Here, white blasts through h7. There are alternatives, but this is the most tenacious defense for black. And now, beautiful, beautiful finish for white. Queen, rook takes, and now the star move. Can you spot it? I'm sure you can. It's not too difficult. Knight h7, discover check. So that knight covers the escape squares. So the king takes. And then rook d3, and well, there's not a lot that can be done about that one. You can put the bishop in the way, but that's that. Wow, just a beautiful move. Must have been fun to calculate this at the board, but a bit scary as well and very time consuming. You know, if you get that wrong, you're just a piece down. But there is a beautiful mate. So rook e5 from Caruana, and now, well, magically this diagonal seems to have cleared again. Knight takes f7. If rook takes, we've got this move, hitting the rook. And after this, there's another avenue for attack here. Queen b3 check. And queen takes b7. And that is going to win. Okay, back we come. Knight takes f7 just played. Queen takes knight. Bishop takes pawn. Right, so white has blasted through. And there's still similar problems. For example, if queen f6 check and queen takes, threatening the rook, and queen h7 mate. So Fabiano played... there's another nice variation. If queen e7, then check. And mate on g8, for example. So in this position, bishop takes just played. Queen takes pawn. There are a lot of variations, but you know, I think it's nice to see some of them because you know they are very beautiful and they had to be calculated. Now there's only one good move for white in this position. There's only one winning move. What is it? Time for a slurp of tea. Time for you to think. White to play and win. Bishop f7. Double discover check. So if king takes, well, we have a similar scenario to last time. The queen comes in and this is going to be mate one way or another. And that's one possibility. So after bishop f7, the king has to go in the corner. And now the queen swoops in, threatening mate on g7. And it looks, well, completely hopeless for black. You can give up the queen here, but, well, that's hardly going to solve the problems. But I think it's at this point that something quite remarkable happens. Caruana defends so resourcefully. Just remarkable, actually, how he defends now. And it reminds me of a game that I witnessed last year in the Isle of Man tournament, the FIDE Chess.com Grand Swiss in the Isle of Man 2019, where Luke McShane, English Grandmaster, was playing against Fabiano, and Luke played a beautiful game and looked like he was about to win. But Caruana found a series of only moves that somehow just kept him in the game, and really surprising defences. And in the end, he succeeded in scraping a draw. It was absolutely remarkable. And Caruana starts finding some extraordinary moves now when he's absolutely on the ropes and looks like he's about to suffer a knockout blow. So rook g5. Now, when you're short of time and you encounter a move like that, you think, what on earth is going on? Well, as Lamy said himself, the simplest way to win is like this, actually. Takes rook d7, because if that's taken, then queen f6 and rook g7. and queen g6, and here there really is, well, it's just a simple win. Exchange up and lots of pawns. So that's the easiest way to win, but that also looks really easy because you're about to deliver mate. You know, which one would you choose? Bishop c3. Aha, that's why he got rid of the rook, because now this diagonal is open and queen g7 is prevented. And now, well, this takes a little bit of calculation, but bishop g8 is winning. And, well, if you're short of time, this looks very, very scary. In fact, white can avoid the checks, not by moving the king, but bishop d5. And eventually the checks run out. But, you know, this is not simple to calculate. You have to get the moves exactly right. And, well, that's the only defense for black. So that was winning, but definitely not easy when you're short of time. King c2 played. This just looks so much simpler. If bishop takes rook, bishop takes rook in this position. Sorry, let's go back. King c2, sorry about that. I leapt forward. King c2 played, and it does look simpler. But knight e7 was played. Obviously, if the bishop takes the rook, then queen g7 is mate. But knight e7, what an incredible defense. And Lamy said that, well, he just didn't see this move, and it just came as a complete shock, you know, almost threw him. But he found a good move, queen e4. And yeah, once again, if bishop takes rook, then it's still mate in a few moves with queen e5. So the bishop is attacked. Bishop f6. So that bishop is doing a good job of protecting these key diagonal and key square. Now, how do you win? Suddenly it's getting tricky. You know, white's king's a bit exposed. Rook's attacked. Should be winning, but how? Well, okay, Lamy says e3 should be winning instantly, but not easy to see why and how. Rook e5 played. It's also good, but now it's tricky. Obviously, if that's taken, then the queen is in again. Rook f8, another brilliant move. An only move to keep things going. If rook takes, then black struggles on with queen c5 check and looking at the rook. So e3 cuts out the queen. But now the queen, well, bounces round the board to hassle the queen from that side. Rook takes knight. Queen c3 check. Now they repeat moves a few times because basically Lamy had overlooked something. And here he avoided the repetition and played king e2. But, well, he confessed in his annotations that after this move, well, earlier, of course, he'd seen it once they got to the repetition, he had completely overlooked that queen takes bishop, queen f1 is mate. Suddenly the f file opens, protecting the king. Well, that's scary, but he had found a way to continue. And in fact, even though he's had to give up a rook, he can simplify into a winning ending with queen d4 check. Exchange is forced, and, well, you can see that at the moment black is 3 pawns up. I mean, these aren't so important. These are the really important pawns, and the fact that black's king is way across the other side of the board in the corner. And actually, the rest of the game is fairly simple. And as Erwin said, with move 40 reached, I got up from the board with a deep sense of relief. I had obviously not wrapped up the game in perfect fashion, but I was still completely winning. Furthermore, the endgame is easy to convert. Yeah, I can imagine the relief he felt. So let's just go through to the end. Caruana took some pawns. Took a pawn. King h7. Bishop takes, rook takes, and now it's just a case of advancing the pawns through to the end. c7 threatened, bishop d8, d5, d6, rook c1. Now just don't allow black to give up the bishop for those two pawns, but no, rook d5 attacks the bishop, which came back, and now a little nudge back with the idea rook c4, and then you're going to be able to push home with c7. Wow. I mean, what an incredible game. I like Erwin's courage in playing g4 and really going for it. And he had calculated some beautiful variations. Now, it did turn into a bit of a schlemazel, but that was really due to Fabiano's really incredible defense with rook g5 and so on afterwards. But Erwin pulled through successfully, and yeah, I think a worthy contender for Game of the Year. But you let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.